Well, hello there. Let me put my big rubber masturbating shoes on. Welcome to my fortress of solitude, the place I like to call home. But needless to say, let's talk about why we're here today. We're going to dive deeper down the road down sociology today. My last video, if you've seen it, we talked about the context of your reality. Now we're going to talk about the context of the self. So to help us better understand the context of the self, we're going to go over a few phrases used in sociology. Nature versus nurture, socialization, the I and the me, the four phases of the self, the extended consciousness, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the different social classes, to help you understand where yourself may tie in all this. So for our first topic, we're going to talk about nature versus nurture. Now, I believe both of these terms to be correct. That nature states that biological factors determines who we're going to become. Nurture states that social factors determine who we're going to become. Now, I believe both of these to be correct because you could potentially say how tall someone's going to become by their genetics. But if you grow up in a home where you don't eat right or eat enough, that you won't ultimately achieve your growth height that your genetics caps you at. Now, not having enough food might have to do with social factors. On the nurture side of things, if you grew up in a hostile home, when you grow up, you are ultimately gonna be hostile yourself one day, as studies have shown us.
I was raised in a broken and abusive household.
This chicken is cold!
When I turned 17, I ran away to Hong Kong, where I met triad boss Kenny Wu, my first love.
Bitch, this chicken is cold!
After that, I had one terrible relationship after another.
Look at you. Nobody wants you but me. You ain't shit without me. You without me equals shit. You understand that, you ugly fat bitch? Now let me borrow your car. Finish him. Luna wins.
Now, with the term nature versus nurture, in the 1920s, around the time Prohibition, alcohol was illegal, there was a program called eugenics. And what eugenics would do, it would determine if you had bad grades or family members who were delinquent would be sterilized to prevent you from reproducing inferior humans. Now, of course, over time, this would lead to migration laws and to eventually Hitler, who would just exterminate people that he would see as inferior.
Oh, sick! Gross! Ginger kids are born with a disease which causes very light skin, red hair, and freckles. Ah, nasty! Yuck! This disease is called gingivitis, and it occurs because ginger kids have no souls. What?
Now, I'm not saying we go out there and exterminate people who we find is different. It's all about acceptance, right? So I kind of go back over nature versus nurture. Nature determines who we are physically, our outward appearance. Nurture determines who we are on the inside, because we are all, in fact, products of our environment. And this moves us on to our next topic, socialization. Socialization has different factors to what determines who we as people become. That nurture aspect that we talked about earlier. In a modern home, we're surrounded by our families, neighbors, friends. This all can be a factor on who we become when we get older. And we as people change about every 10 years. So it doesn't stop just as you're a kid. Even when you're an adult, your 20s, 30s, you're always meeting new people, learning new things, coworkers, classmates, teachers, people who can dramatically change who you are. So we went and talked about earlier about nature versus nurture and eugenics and extermination. Shouldn't exterminate someone because they're different. Just give them the opportunity to change. And if that doesn't work, Then you exterminate them.
I'll kill every last one of you. Get up! Let me kill you again, and again, and again! You're mine, all of you. You're all gonna die.
So moving on to our next topic, the I and the me. G.H. Mead argued that the self is not part of the body, and it does not exist at birth until you start to interact with others. Mead also argued that by taking the role of the other, we become self-aware. In other words, the self has two key parts, the I and the me. Now this is very, very confusing. It confused the mess out of me, so I think I maybe haven't understood. The I is the creative, the active form of the self. It takes the self as a subject, something that does, thinks, acts. Think of the I as the nurture, who we are on the inside. The me is the self as seen through the eyes of others. It takes the self as an object, something that is seen or understood, something that occupies a space within society. So think of the me as the nature part of it, your physical, your outward appearances. So the I and the me, the I, think of it as who you are on the inside. And the me is what you're seeing right now on your camera. See the me! So, to sum up this topic, the I and the me. The I is the nurture, who you are on the inside. The me is who you are on the outside. So to be self-aware, to create the self, you can't create the self without the me or the I. The me is just the physical, outward impression of yourself. Without the inside part to recognize the self, to recognize the me, you have no self. This is all very, very confusing, I know. I'm confusing myself just talking about it. So, we'll just move right on to the next topic. So moving on to our next topic, the extended consciousness. The extended consciousness, we'll call it, the self, is a good way of seeing the extended consciousness because it is created through the me and the I. Let's use an example here. When you start contemplating life, for example, COVID's going on. You're in the middle of a pandemic. You start asking yourself questions like, will I take virtual classes or live classes? Am I going to go back to work? How will I find a new job? How will I pay the bills? You are weighing your options. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the extended consciousness at work. You are thinking of yourself as a thing. You are stepping outside of yourself to determine the consequences of the actions and moves you are going to make. All animals, including humans, have a consciousness, but only humans, and a few exceptions of animals like birds or dolphins or something, but only humans develop an extended consciousness. Animals do not develop a true sense of self, which can be viewed from the outside as an objective thing. Let's say you put a mirror in front of an animal, your dog, your cat. Animals will see its reflection in the mirror and not see its reflection as itself, but as someone else. They will ignore the reflection or interact with it. They may even go behind the mirror looking for the other person or animal because they don't see this thing in the mirror as themselves. The extended consciousness, something most animals don't possess. So one thing that is very interesting that differs from animals and humans, most animals upon birth are stronger than any human. A horse can start walking immediately upon birth. But the one thing animals don't have, those social interactions. We as humans become stronger than animals thanks to social interactions. Our previous topic we talked about. It's how we truly develop. But let's say You took a child. Now, this study is completely illegal, so don't let me catch any of you fine people out there trying this. But let's say you take a human, a baby, a child, and you deny that child any type of social interaction. You lock them in the closet and never let them out. Only open the door to feed them, and that is it. In that instance, you create what we like to call a feral child. Someone who lacks any type of social interaction, and doesn't know how. They don't truly develop that extended consciousness. They become quite bizarre.
It's us. Us. We must get the precious. We must get it back. Patience. Patience, my love. First, we must lead them to her. We lead them to the winding stair.
Okay, let's say you didn't lock a child in the closet. Let's now talk about our next subject, the 4 phases of the development of the self. These phases are broken down, and we'll go into each one before we move on to the next one. So our first phase of development of the self, the pre-play stage, preparatory. Now keep in mind, as we talk about these, there's really not a set age limit onto when you reach the next stage. It's just a development that we all develop at our own speeds. The pre-play stage, or preparatory. The child doesn't yet understand the perspective of the other. Most interactions in social learning involves basic intimidations. Children are preparing for role-taking through intimidative actions and learning the language of those in their immediate environment. So in this phase, the child is literally copying what they see, which moves into the next stage, the play stage. This phase involves taking the role of a significant other, such as a mother, sister, or friend, father, whatever. Children learn social norms and expectations by stepping into the shoes of the significant other. So, when a child does this, they will typically react out what they see, and therefore gain and see how you as the parent reacts to what they did. If you react good, then what they did is good, and now they know that's good. If you did something, they did something bad, and they get a bad arising that teaches them, that's a no-no. So this moves us on to our next stage, the game stage. The child begins to identify with many others in one situation. That is, they are able to take on multiple roles and understand the interplay between various roles and social actions within a particular social scene. So a child can watch a movie and understand this person's good, this person's bad, yada yada. The game stage. They start to understand the different roles that they see. And lastly, the generalized other. In this phase, abstract thinking is possible. The child can take the role of many others in many situations. In this phase, the child can view a map or globe and understand that the map is a smaller symbolic representation of the real world. That is a unique trait only present in humans. That extended consciousness we talked about. So, moving on to our next topic, we will be discussing Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this chart, it helps understand what people need and how people's needs differ. It is an important part of any effective management. For example, some people work primarily for money, fulfill other needs elsewhere, correct? Go to job, make money, that's it. But others like to go to work because they enjoy their coworkers, or they feel respected by others and appreciated for their good work. Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests that if a lower need is not met, then the higher ones will be ignored. So we're going to dive into this chart, starting from the bottom, working our way up. Our first part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the physiological. The basics of survival: breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis. Homeostasis is a fancy word for being at a nice temperature, room temperature, survival temperature. Excretion, also known as pooping, what I may or may not have been doing when this video started. required for the body's survival, and if one of these are not met, the body cannot survive. So when you are at this level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very basics of human survival, you're not worried about a job, you're not worried about politics, you're just worried about your next meal. And yes, surprising alert, this actually does happen to some people.
You know, in Latin, they say Terra Bell means beautiful earth. But in Georgia, Terra Bell means fucked up place to live. Terrible Terra Bell, yes sir, that's our name for it. It was hard, you know. A lot of people don't know that places like this even exist in America. You know what I'm talking about? They don't know how dirty the South really gets. That's a damn shame. But that's real shit though, nigga. You got naked kids, you got parents that gotta choose between food and clothes for their kids, shorty. Or for themselves.
So our next level on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is safety. Job security, personal security, health, and well-being. The first two levels are important to the physical survival of the person. Once individuals have basic nutrition, shelter, and safety, they seek to fulfill higher level of needs, protecting your food and what's yours.
No! Wait, stop! It's only 30 seconds late. In the face.
So once you have the physiological needs met and the safety needs met, you move on to the next level of the hierarchy of needs: love and belonging, friendship, family, sexual intimacy. When individuals have taken care of themselves physically, they can address their need to share and connect with others. Humans need to feel a sense of belonging and acceptance, whether it comes from a large social group or a small network of family and friends. Without these attachments, people can be vulnerable to physiological difficulties such as loneliness, social anxiety, depression, and these conditions, when severe, can impair a person's ability to address basic physiological needs such as eating and sleeping.
Go away.
Stan, you can't keep doing this to yourself. You have to go live.
Why? What's the point of living when the only girl I'll ever love is gone?
God, what a fag. Dude, not now.
So once your physiological, safety, love, and belonging needs have been met, you move on to the next level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: esteem. I hope I'm saying that right. Esteem represents a normal human desire to be valued and validated by others. Though, for example, the recognition of success or status.
I'm gonna get a chain. Oh, of course. Now I get it. Huey, you not a real nigga like me, see? You don't understand how bad a nigga need a chain. If I had a chain, everything in my life would be perfect. But what happened to the chain that Aunt Cookie bought you? Nigga, you know that wasn't no chain, that was a necklace. This'll be a real chain. Oh, man, I can't wait for niggas to start hating, I can't wait. So you judge your success by the amount of ill will you generate from those around you. Hey, if niggas ain't mad at you, then you doing something wrong. By that definition, then, you have a very bright future. Thanks, man.
So once your physiological, safety, love and well-being, esteem, needs have been met, you now move on to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: self-actualization. Self-actualization, at this level, people tend to step outside of problems outside of their own. They take on traits such as self-expression, morality, spontaneously, problem-solving, accepting of facts, being more politically aware, going on with current events. At this stage, people feel they have reached their full potential and are doing everything they're capable of. Self-actualization is rarely a permanent feeling or state. Rather, it refers to the ongoing need for professional growth and discovery, the type that people have sought their entire lives. Self-actualization may occur after reaching an important goal or overwhelming a particular challenge. Another term I like to use for this: becoming woke.
And I guarantee you won't be so lucky this time around when I drill these right into your skull!
So moving on to our last and final topic, the different social classes. These are the different classes that categorize where somebody's social living status is at. Now we're going to work our way from the bottom and work our way up with each different social class. Can you identify which class you may fall under when I list all these? Lower class, considered also as working poor, many of the people lack high school degrees in this category, and many are unemployed or employed only part-time in semi-skilled or unskilled jobs. When they do work, they work as janitors, house cleaners, migrant laborers, or in the fast food industry. They tend to rent apartments rather than own their own home, lack medical insurance, and have inadequate diets.
You think you're man enough to fight me, you little shit? Yeah, 'cause you're a drunk piece of shit, Dan!
You're both drunk pieces of shit! Both of you sit the fuck down!
Shoot him!
They're noisy.
Fuck you, bitch!
You son of a bitch!
They're nasty.
You done spilt that on my titty, skank!
They're white trash. And when you give them a little Pabst Blue Ribbon, they can't help getting arrested. Battle seems innocent enough. But the children in this home live in a world of neglect.
Down on the ground! Let's go!
Let's move!
Oh wow, poor people being arrested. What a rare occurrence.
Our next class is the working class. They generally work in blue-collar jobs such as factory work, construction, restaurants, serving, and less skilled clinical positions. People in working classes typically do not have four-year college degrees, and some do not have high school degrees. Although most are not living in official poverty, their medical bills or an expensive car repair would be almost impossible to pay without going into considerable debt. Working class families are far less likely than their wealthier counterparts to own their own homes or send their children to college. Many of them live at risk for unemployment if and when their companies decide to downside and lay off workers. Lower middle class typically work in white-collar jobs as nurses, teachers, and like many college degrees, usually from less prestige colleges. But many also have two-year degrees or only a high school diploma. They live somewhat comfortable lives, but can hardly afford to go on expensive vacations or buy expensive cars. They can't send their children to expensive colleges either. Moving on to the middle class, upper middle. People in the upper middle class typically have college and very often graduate or have professional degrees, live in the suburbs or in fairly expensive urban areas, and are bankers, lawyers, engineers, corporate managers, financial advisors, among other occupations. Next, we move on to the corporate class, i.e., lower upper class. Members have new money acquired through hard work, lucky investments, etc. In many ways, their lives are similar to those of their old money counterparts, but they do not enjoy the prestige and authority that the old money brings. And our very top class, the upper class. Members of the upper class have old money that has been in their family for generations. They belong to exclusive clubs and live in exclusive neighborhoods, have their names in the social register, send their children to expensive private schools, and serve on the boards of museums, corporations, major charities, and exert more influence on the political process and other areas of life behind the scenes. This group consists of roughly 1% to 5% of the population. So this is that 1% we're talking about.
Ruin the party? They love me. These people aren't worried about us. They're not worried about anything. They're rich. No matter what happens, these people just keep applauding.
Fuck y'all looking at?
And that brings an end of our lesson. Hope you all enjoyed traveling down this sociology road with me to help us better understand society, and in this video to help us better understand ourselves and our current situations. So if you'll excuse me, duty calls, and I'm not talking about the booty duty.